Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is our NFL preview show. We take care of it every Tuesday with Joey Clinkscales, general manager, former personnel director, player director, scouting director, former player himself, Brian LeBel, our NFL and NCAA analyst. I'm Harper LeBel. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. A lot going on in the National Football League, especially today. In the last couple of hours, we've learned that John Harbaugh is looking for work. He is no longer gainfully employed with the Baltimore Ravens. Joey, I kind of was teasing with this about 2 weeks ago, and you made mention of this. One of the things that you said, among many, was he won't be looking for a job very long. And I'm wondering if they're going to be interviewing him as early as maybe tomorrow, if he just wants to take a week off and just kind of rest up a little bit and figure out what he wants to do. But certainly a surprise coming out of Baltimore.
Well, I don't think it's any surprise that it is a surprise that he was let go, that he wasn't retained. But that won't be a surprise if he's not hired pretty quickly. I think that when you have a coach that's been a head coach for 18 years, been to a couple Super Bowls, teams have always been competitive. I think those are traits you look for in a leader when you're looking for a head coach. It's not the hottest coordinator. It's not, all those things are, in my opinion, are surface things. You want a leader to lead your organization. And then you get the pieces around him, i.e. The coordinator, the defense coordinator, whomever it may be. And John Harbaugh has shown throughout his tenure as a head football coach that he can lead a football team, that he can lead men. Now, it was a rumor out today that, his voice had got stale in the locker room. But I'm curious how stale it would have been had they not been injured and gotten into the playoffs. Seems like it would have been less stale. But that being said, firings don't really occur because of what happened this year or in the last month of the season. It's usually a culmination of things that happen over time that causes something like that. And in his situation, we could go. There are a multitude of things from. I think what really frustrated a lot of people, including probably ownership. The fact that he didn't take more control of the offense when Lamar was hurt and mandated that they run the ball a lot more with Derrick Henry instead of passing the ball so much. And in the fourth quarter, Derrick Henry being on the sideline. They had substantial injuries in the first half of the season, and their defense was god-awful for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. So I think a combination of all that, despite them going on a great run when Lamar came back, all that probably played a factor into it.
Well, before I go on to Brian, you bring up a very interesting point, how it could be a culmination of things. He didn't have anything to do with the injuries that occurred earlier in the season. That's the part that I find very interesting, is that ultimately the coach is going to be to blame for everything. I get it. I certainly understand. But the portion of this that is so out of his control.
Well, let me say this.
Go right ahead.
Let me say this. If you have two entities here, okay, and one of them is a generational player and the other one is probably replaceable, then you're always going to stick with the player who's the irreplaceable player. So if you have a Lamar Jackson, and no matter who the coach is, if there's an issue and you feel like that guy's irreplaceable, then this thing over here is tenable. And what happens with that? You break it. If something is tenable and you can't, no matter what you do, you can't change it, then you break it and move on to the next thing. So I think it came down to, do we change head coach and try to get a breath of fresh air in the building, or the fact that Lamar Jackson has a contract issue coming up this year because it's a big, huge number next year. So they're going to try to restructure. So I think all these things played a factor in it. So I wouldn't say the injuries, because you can't blame injuries on a player, because this is technically a gladiator sport. You're going to get hurt. So it's just interesting how it all played out. But I don't think John Harbaugh will be unemployed very long if he chooses to go back to work.
But a very interesting point that he made, Brian, also is that maybe a stale message in the locker room. And that's something that really can't be diminished unless you bring in a bunch of new players. You don't have the ability to do that. I don't know if there was a loss in the locker room between the coaches and the player in the relationship. I'm not there, but we can speculate that there might have been. Needless to say, boy, they made a valiant effort to try to get themselves into the playoffs with the last game of the season having great significance, even though you lost it. I would tend to think that one game wouldn't make that decision. But if you don't mind me saying so, Brian, if I remember, the Michael Bidwell gives the hug of death to his head coach right before the last game of the season, say, hey, I'm pulling for you. And I don't think he was in the tunnel before he was fired in Arizona. So there are different ways of looking at this, but certainly a surprise move in Baltimore.
You know, I think this roster, like Joey said, you have a generational type quarterback, right? Lamar Jackson, MVP of the league. Obviously you have some injuries, and it's hard to overcome when the leader of your team and the face of your franchise is unable to suit up. But I think the main thought process is there's too much talent on this team to finish 8-9, right? I know the injuries wear you down, and it's unfortunate, but I think for the most part, if you go back to the beginning of the season, like Joey said, when the defense was really, really bad, right? And then with the instance where they keep Derrick Henry off the field, when they're beating the New England Patriots, who are one of the best teams in the league, they have a chance to steal a game, right? Yeah. And they kind of give it away. They go away from their bread and butter. It's head scratching, and it's the only place you can really point the finger is the coach. And this is the first time in a long time, if not ever, you've been able to do that for this Baltimore Ravens team. And Harbaugh's been there a long time. He's won a lot of games, but the last couple seasons they faltered. They haven't been as good. And I just think there was some underachieving. And I think ownership saw that. And I think the idea is you have Lamar Jackson now for how long, you don't know, right? Joey mentioned the contract situation where he could end up, and maybe he requests a trade. We don't know. But at some point, you're either going to have to say, we're going to have to either win now with this guy, which we don't think we can do with Harbaugh, or we're going to have to retool, which they probably don't want to do with Harbaugh anyways. But it's funny because they're a 44-yard field goal away at the end of regulation from being in the playoffs right now. And I certainly don't think they would have fired in them. At least, maybe you wait till the offseason, or if they win another, playoff game, if they were to steal a game this weekend, a wildcard weekend. But just some interesting stuff. This is a very interesting coaching cycle too, because there's a couple of guys that got fired that I look at. I think they're pretty good coaches. I think Harbaugh's in there. Stefanski, who we got a picture up there, I think he's pretty good. So it's going to be an interesting coaching cycle. It's part of the business. Guys get fired all the time, but to see a guy like Harbaugh get canned, who's been there forever, and it's just, it's not a familiar sight, and it's just something you're not used to seeing. So obviously, it's just it's a little bit more surprising.
And Harper, one quick thing. And sometimes coaches take the bullet for other coaches, and what I mean by that is, and I'm not saying this happened because I don't know, but it all come out. It always does. He may have been asked to fire the defensive coordinator. He may have been asked to fire the offensive coordinator, and he didn't want to do that. So, and not doing that, he threw himself on a sword, and everybody gets fired and kind of go along. And if everybody has a contract, those contracts will be paid out. But, especially if he's falling on the sword for a young coach who, might tarnish his career, and he knows that, he's like, well, I'm not going to fire this guy. I'll do X, Y, Z, and ownership or whomever say that, well, if you're not going to fire him, then we're going to relieve you of your duties. And he says, okay. I mean, we don't know if that happened, but those type things have happened in the past.
They have. Yeah. And speaking of taking a bullet for the other coaches, there's some coaches that would rather not take the bullet and fire their offensive or defensive coordinator. The Commanders let go of both today. Cowboys let go of their defensive coordinator. Lions get rid of their offensive coordinator. That's just for today that I'm aware of. There's some others that have gone. There's some other teams, Joey, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. Atlanta, Cleveland, Las Vegas. We mentioned Baltimore. I briefly mentioned Arizona. Tennessee and the New York Giants have all had a change of pace in terms of their head coach and in some cases their general manager as well. Just any comments that you may make regarding the other firings, if you don't mind, or the question that I like to ask of those teams that I mentioned, who is the most playoff ready for a coach and a general manager to come in, take over and say, we can get this done in 2 years or maybe even one? If that's a possibility, you let me know.
Well, there are a couple of things I'll address right quick. The first thing is I think the Commanders situation is probably a good situation to walk into because one of two things are going to happen. The offense coordinator that comes in is either going to mess this thing up and stunt the growth of Jalen Daniels, or he's going to he's going to improve the elevate the growth of Jaden Daniels, because Jalen, I mean, he was on a great trajectory. He got hurt, didn't play. I mean, he missed 10 games this year. And I think Kingsbury actually wanted out so he could pursue other opportunities, i.e., a head coaching position, or he knew of another offense coordinator position that would come open. So I think that situation, and the head coach had already taken over the defensive play calling, so you had to assume that the defense coordinator, just like in the offense coordinator in Detroit, those guys will be fired once the head coach take over those positions. But as far as the head coach, the best head coaching job available, that's tricky. I think the Giants probably have, they have a young quarterback who, if you can keep him from killing himself, might be a pretty good player, might be a franchise type player, because you have a stud wide receiver who will be back. You have a defensive line that can rush the passer. You still have to get better on the offensive line and get better running the ball. But they have real pieces there that you can build around. So I think that's a good job. Now it depends on whether you want to work with that general manager too, because that general manager, this is a crucial year for him. I mean, he may get a guy or want a guy that will help him save himself. So the next question would be, is that an attractive job for a Harbaugh or a Stefanski? Maybe not with a GM in that position. So all those things, all those factors play. Every job is not created equal, as we know. So it all depends on the priorities that the person looking for the job sets. In Miami, I mean, they're looking for a general manager. You can get a guy that wants to be a general manager, or you can get a general manager say, I don't want to work with this head coach.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of factors that play in.
Right. Of the teams that had the firing, Brian, do any stick out aside from the Baltimore, obviously the biggest surprise of the day, and of this young Black Monday was just yesterday. So the young off season for many of the teams that didn't make the playoffs, of course, they get to rebuild starting yesterday. And which job, the same question to you, which job do you think has the most potential for being I can turn this boat around and get us winning again, like Dan Campbell said just within a few short hours after we're going to bite your kneecaps off, we're going to get tougher. He started making some moves, and 2 years later they're in the playoffs, and they have been ever since this year. So different things can happen, but I'll leave it up to you.
I mean, it's going to vary, because if you're looking for a clean break, right? We're looking to build from the ground up, building blocks, have a ton of cap space, have a ton of picks, have a franchise quarterback. Tennessee's a very intriguing job, because you're going to have over $100 million in cap space. You have Cam Ward. Now, granted, we talked about all year, they do need a lot of help. They need a lot of skill position guys. They got a monster up front of the defense so they can anchor, but you got all this money, you got all these picks. And I think, the idea isn't necessarily we have to win next year, but I mean, certainly you can do better than 3 wins, following up what they did this year. It was just, they improved. I think they got some talent, but if you're looking for a fresh start, you can bring in a ton of talent, kind of recruit your own kind of guys like they do in college, right? You want to bring in your own guys. And then on the flip side, you look at, the Atlanta job is they were half a game realistically away from the playoffs. They got a good running back. Their quarterback situation is kind of messy, but they got a lot of young talent on defense. It's a clean break. So you're looking at a new CEO, you're looking at a new, president of football operations, you're looking at a new coach, a GM, the whole 9 yards. So I think it just varies. Joey mentioned the New York job. I think that's intriguing because I think they have a ton of young talent. And I think if Neighbors stays healthy, if Dart stays healthy, if Scatterbo stays healthy, I think they could have made some noise. I don't think they were, better than Philadelphia, but they could have made some noise in the NFC. I think the one job I wouldn't want, I don't think I'd want to go to Oakland right now, and I don't think I'd want to go to Arizona just because there's a lot of question marks and you don't know what's happening. But there's some good jobs, there's some good coaches. This could be a kind of a weird cycle because, guys like Stefanski, guys like Harbaugh, I think they're good coaches. I think they're highly, touted across the league, and I think at a certain point they're going to have their pick of the jobs, and I think it's going to kind of come down to whether or not our team's just waiting on them to make a decision. And then obviously the dominoes start to fall, but. A lot of intriguing jobs, and I don't really think there's any bad jobs. It's just I think the larger projects, like I mentioned, obviously are Arizona and Las Vegas.
Joey, you've been there. Tell me a little bit about the Raiders. and what the situation is there. Pete came in chewing gum and clapping and smiling all over the place. And if you think a message, in my opinion, that didn't get heard, it was certainly Pete's at that time. It just looked like it just was tough. And yes, injuries, everything like that. But is that a tougher place than what I would think it would be to try to win?
I would be, if I had my choice of places to go, that wouldn't be in the top 4 or 5. I mean, and the way I'll put it is, since John Gruden, they've had 5 coaches?
Yeah,
that should tell you a lot. There's a reason why. So I'll leave it at that. That should tell you a lot. They had between Gruden, then they had the interim coach who was a special teams coach, and then they had another guy, and then they had the linebacker,
Pierce, yeah,
and now Pete Carroll. So there's something going on there that's not right, and maybe Tom Brady can help address that and fix that. But out of all the jobs available, they need the most work. Their best player, I think, will not be there next year. The defensive lineman, I think he's going to ask for a trade this offseason. So it's going to be a complete rebuild. Okay, and how long are they going to stick with you through a complete rebuild? So out of all the spots, I would be most concerned taking that job.
Yeah, there's plenty of truth in that. You would think that it's an easy situation, but there's a lot of things under the waves that a lot of people don't see. And if Tom Brady's going to be the one to come do it, I certainly that's just like for me with the Falcons. Why are you hiring a firm? Just to make a decision and stick to it. Why would Tom Brady be the one who's not even there? He's in the booth. But that's my personal opinion. Let's talk about something that's a little more important and what is going to happen, and that's going to be we've got 6 ball games, guys. 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, a Monday nighter. The last Monday night game of the season. Let us start, or at least attempt to begin, with the Los Angeles Rams taking on the Carolina Panthers. Joey, we'll start with you. Rams have been impressive up until the last, 3 ball games. They've lost 2 of the last 3. Stafford's numbers are incredible, 4,700 yards. He's got 46 touchdowns versus 8 interceptions. They're first in passing. They're 7th in running. They're first in scoring. They're 10th in defense. Tell me why the Rams are only 10.5-point underdogs, or they're favored by 10.5, on the road. This should be a blowout according to what the Las Vegas bettors are putting together. But Carolina's in the playoffs. Everybody has a chance, don't they?
Yeah, everybody's got a punch of chance when you get in the playoffs. Now, all that being said, the Rams should win. But guess what? 3 or 4 weeks ago, they should have won in Carolina as well, and they lost. Okay, so they're going back to the scene of the crime. Where they lost and their quarterback threw a couple interceptions. So, but they will be at full strength. They've rested up some guys, so they're going in definitely in playoff mode, knowing this is win or go home against a Carolina team that has not been able to score a lot of points lately. So it'll be interesting. I do think the Rams are favored. They should be favored with Puka and Devontae Adams and the running game that they have and the defense they play with, being able to rush the passer. I say all that, and again, I revert back to a few weeks ago. They went into Carolina with these same players and lost a close game.
Laid an egg. Yep.
So
yep,
it'll be interesting. And Carolina, again, they're a young team. They got a fighter's chance. They're probably a little bit ahead of schedule where everybody thought they were. Which is why I think they're 10.5-point underdogs at home, which is almost unheard of at home. Yeah, being a 10.5-point underdog. But I would have to take the Rams in this game, probably by the 10.5 points.
Brian, they're 8-9 total, right? They end up with a tie-breaking win against Tampa. Even though they lose the game, they get in because of the Falcons helping out there. They've lost 3 of their last 4. They've lost 4 of their last 6. They are the highest ranking that they have in terms of the rest of the league is their defense. They're 15th in the league. in defense. They give up 22 points a game, but they only score 18. That's 27th. Their rushing is 19th in the league. Their passing is 26th. I don't even know how they got in the playoffs, but guess what? They're going to be hosting a first-round wild card playoff game on Friday at 4:30. That game will be on Fox. Give me reasons why you would say, you know what, Carolina does have a puncher's chance.
Well, like Joey said, they beat them just a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And I will say this: the Rams. The only time I've seen the Rams struggled is on the road East Coast games. They have not played particularly well in this time zone. So I think if you're Carolina, that's an advantage. I think if you can get on them early, though, I think you're going to have to jump on them early. Otherwise, it's going to be a long day for them. I think they need to run the ball. I think I need to see that Bryce Young again, because that Bryce Young came out. He was confident. He was celebrating. He almost looked cocky against the Rams last time they played him. He was very efficient. He was throwing the ball over the yard. They got to get Ted McMillan involved early. They got to run the ball. The thing is, I think almost everything needs to go right for them to win this game, right? I think that's kind of their backs are up against the wall. I think the Rams are going to be more prepared. I think the game in Atlanta was, it's a Monday night game. It's a weird time. And then obviously the game in Carolina was a 1:00 game. I just don't think they were acclimated yet. If they come out flat in the first half, it could be one of those things where maybe Carolina jumps on them early enough and they get enough points to where they can kind of hold on. But I think this Rams defense is too good. I think we talked about it all year, and then now it's the time when you show it. Defense travels. The Rams have a very good defense. As long as they play, their style, their brand of football, they keep everything in front of them. It's hard on paper, like you said, that there's nothing that really jumps out at you if you're the Panthers. I mean, they're 8-9. They won the worst division of football barely. They should have lost, but they got help, and it's really hard to pick against the Rams. If I'm the Panthers, though, we got to start fast, and we got to hope for a couple of Matthew Stafford mistakes if we want to win this game.
Yeah, and as Joey said, 10.5 on the road is really saying a lot. I mean, it's obviously the biggest spread, and I don't go by the spread. Joey, I know you don't either, Ryan.
No.
It's just a telltale of the way most people are thinking about this. It's such an offshoot from what is normal for the playoffs. You're used to 1 or 2.5 points being a difference. This is obviously a much larger version of that. And again, if Stafford plays well, but you know what? They lost 2 of the last 3, and then they lost to Carolina just a few weeks ago. So anything can happen. Again, that is the 4:30 game, folks. That is Saturday on Fox. It's the only game in town. So your weekend of football will start on Saturday, mid-afternoon Eastern time. Next game that we're going to look at is a repeat, right? The third time these guys play each other. Green Bay, who, by the way, has lost 4 in a row and 6 of their last 10. They kind of backed their way into the playoffs at 9-7-1. They go to Chicago, and they're losers of 2 in a row. They've lost 3 of the last 5. Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, their numbers are fairly similar. One thing about this, though, is the Bears' running game, number 3 in the league right now. And Joey, whether it's a cold game in Chicago, whatever, you have to be able to run the ball in the playoffs, especially in January. And it seems like the Bears are better suited for that. The Packers are 15th in the league. They're averaging about 119 yards a game versus the 144 that the Bears have.
Yes, this ought to be a really, really good football game. And I know the Packers are favored by like 1.5, something like that. But I would tend to think Chicago will win this game, only from the standpoint of I think they run the ball a lot better. I think the Packers are really lacking a defensive personality right now. They really can't rush the passer without Micah being there. They struggle to do that. And not that he was getting, 23 sacks in the season, but he was opening up for everybody else. So they had to put, they had to allow a lot 4 to 6 hands on Micah on every passing play, and the other guys were able to eat. Now they don't have to do that. So everybody's everybody's in their natural position, and I think it's going to be tough for Green Bay to get a lot of pressure without blitzing a whole lot. And if they do that, then I feel like Caleb can make plays with his legs, obviously. And Jordan Love is back, so we have to give him his kudos. And he's won a playoff game before. He's played tough, but if I'm betting, I'm taking Chicago. Yeah,
very interesting. I'm going to mention the crowd with you, Brian. The Green Bay crowd, for example, they never boo. There was the 2004 Michael Vick Atlanta Falcons go into Green Bay, and at halftime, John Madden and I believe it was Al Michaels were doing the game, And Madden says, I've been here in Green Bay for a whole lot of years, and I've never heard a crowd boo the Packers the way they're booing the team right now. They just don't do it much. I think Chicago, when they lost to Detroit a couple of days ago, the crowd, they're not sure about this team yet. It's not the same crowd that you had in 1985 that was just waiting for anyone to come out of the locker room. It was the Lions and it was the Christians, and it was an epic, not the Detroit Lions. I'm just talking, we're going to kick some tail and we're going to enjoy this. That's what 85 was. 84 was the same type of situation. Bear fans today really don't know what they have, so they're going to cheer for their team. But if they get behind early, I don't think you're going to hear boos, but they're going to go, what happened? So how does that 12th man come into play in Chicago here on Saturday evening? The game kicks off at 8 o'clock. It's a prime video game. Your thoughts here on this one?
When you're cold, right? Chicago's one of those places where you don't want to go play, because when it gets cold and the weather's beating at you and then the crowd starts beating at you and the guys across from you are beating at you, it wears on you. But I mean, Green Bay is a weather team, right? They're used to this. They're accustomed to this. They practice in this. It's the same weather all week. So I think as far as the crowd, I think as far as the fans, it was more so like, they lost early to Detroit and they kind of caught fire, right? They kind of figured out what they were. They kind of got going. The play calling kicked in. They started running the ball well. Caleb was playing. He's not playing out of his mind, but he's making the plays and he's not turning the ball over. I think the Bears are still number one in turnover differential in the league. I think that was their bread and butter. They're not going to get a ton of sacks. They're not going to eat at you defensively. They don't crush you offensively, but they take care of the football and they take it away from you when they can. It's more so this is still a very young team, and this is a team that was last in the NFC North last year. And you go from the worst of first teams are very intriguing because as a fan, you just kind of enjoy the ride, right? Because expectations coming in probably weren't low. You get a new coach, you have some talent, but they exceed expectations. They're flying high right now, and I kind of think it's kind of like they're waiting for something to happen. It's like when you hear, the home run in the playoffs for baseball, when it's in the air, the crowd gets dead silent. I think that's where they're at right now, because it's a culmination of, we wanted to win, we want to do all these things, we want to get to the playoffs. Well, it's here now, right? The playoffs are here, and it's a familiar foe. And I think at this point in time, they're just saying, how do we react? Can we beat these guys? Can we win a playoff game? And if we come out there and get punched, are we going to be able to punch back? Are we able to, go to toe with these guys who, LaFleur has playoff experience. A lot of these guys on the Packers side have playoff experience. And are we going to act our age because they're a very young team? Or are we going to come out and are we going to play a good brand of football and kind of establish that, hey, as a football team, we're here and we're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time?
It's going to be interesting for me watching this, because if the Bears do dominate, they get a 14-point lead or 17 or something like that, I think the place is going to go absolutely bonkers. They've been waiting for such a long time for something like this to happen and make it even harder on Green Bay. I think if Green Bay comes out and scores early and dominates in a way where they, we give up a field goal, but we score again, and then we give up another field goal, and then, we don't punt a whole heck of a lot, and it'll keep the crowd out of it. I really think that it's a wait and see. But any other thoughts before we move on, Joey? I'm talking about the crowd more than the teams. But
the most interesting thing about this is, these guys are in the same division,
and they know each other
there. Yeah, and this is only the third time in the history of this thing that they've played each other in the playoffs. So this is a unique situation. They played each other, I want to say, if my memory is correct, like 1947, and then they played a game in the playoffs in like 2010, and now in this year. So
yeah, wasn't Jay Cutler the quarterback for the Bears back in?
Maybe, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Out of the whole history of this this rivalry, this is the third time ever they've played in the playoffs. So that adds a little extra fuel to this rivalry.
Well, 8 o'clock is, again, a prime video game. You've got two teams that know each other. They can finish each other's sentences. They probably, they know everything about each other. The 9-7-1 Packers, again, losers of 4 in a row coming into the playoffs, kind of backing in. And then Chicago losing 2 in a row. Very interesting if you look at this, but good luck to both of those teams. And we'll be watching for sure. Sunday, 1 o'clock, this game will be on CBS. Boy, if this game were in Buffalo, it'd certainly be a lot different. The Bills are favored by 1.5 going into Jacksonville. The 13-4 Jacksonville Jaguars still not getting a whole lot of respect. They are home underdogs. They are 12th in passing, 20th in rushing, 6th in scoring, and 8th in total defense. Joey, the Jacksonville Jaguars have certainly done a pretty good job of keeping people like us silent and not knowing what to think about them until we get at least into the wild card game. They get to host, though, and this is going to be one of the closer games that I think most NFL folks that whether you're a fan or just you're going to want to pay attention to what goes on in this one.
Yeah, I was late to come to the Jaguar party, as I'm sure a lot of other people were. But Trevor Lawrence has continued to get better throughout the season. A lot of people call him the second coming of a Josh Allen type who can throw the ball and really, when he chooses to run, he can really, in which he's done a lot of lately, do a lot of good things on the ground with his legs. So this will be interesting, and I think the underrated part of this football game again is the Jacksonville defense. I think they will be the deciding factor in this game, and I know the point spread is favoring Buffalo, but I'm going to take Jacksonville here at home. I think this is one of the biggest games that Jacksonville have had at home since they had a chance to be in the AFC Championship game back in the late 90s. So I think the crowd is going to be amazing down there. I think it's going to be a great scene. I think it'll probably be a fairly close game, but I'm going to pick Jacksonville at home because of their defense.
Josh Allen has thrown for 25 touchdowns, Brian, 10 interceptions. James Cook is leading the league in rushing, 1,621 yards. He has 12 touchdowns. They're 15th in passing, but like I said, they're number one in rushing. They're 4th overall in scoring. They're 12th defensively. I thought they were a little bit lower than that, but that's a little bit of a spread. They're not in the top 10, though. And again, Jacksonville's defense is number 8. So what's the bend and break in this for you?
This is another game like the Bears game. I feel like the Jaguars are the better football team coming into this game. I just feel like they're the more complete team. Now, I think Josh Allen has been here before. I think this is just another game for him, right? This is just a ho-hum. Hey, I've played against Mahomes. I played against Burrow. I played against I played against all these guys. So Trevor Lawrence, I don't think there's going to be any fear in his eyes. I don't think there's going to be any hesitation. I think if there's a guy you want leading your team coming into this playoffs, right, either him or Stafford would be two of the guys at the top of the list that I would have just because they have the experience. This is kind of a new thing for the Jaguars. They haven't hosted a playoff game. I think they lost to the Patriots. What was that, 2017? Was it, or even before that? It's been a while for them since they played a meaningful football game, like Joey mentioned, at home. So, big stakes. This is another team, a lot like Chicago, where it's a pleasant surprise, and now it's time to show me, right? You made the playoffs. You did all the chest beating during the regular season. They won all those games in a row. They beat the Broncos. They went to Denver and did it, and they won their division. I don't think they were the worst team in the division last year, but it was a team that a lot of people coming in. I don't think anyone had the Jaguars making the playoffs, right? And they were flirting with the number 1 overall seed there for a little bit. So it's playoff time, though. It's time to win. It's time to all of that has to amount to something. If they don't get it done on Sunday, then it doesn't really mean anything, right? So the experience is going to be great for them. I think playing at home, playing behind that crowd, which has been pretty raucous the last couple months, I think it's going to be big for them. But I want Jacksonville I want to pick them. I think they're going to win this game. It's hard to go against Josh Allen, but I think the Jaguars are I think they're a more complete football game and a football team, and I think they might be a little bit better coached at this point too.
Yeah, that was my next question. I hate to interrupt you, Harper, but what happens if Buffalo loses this game? Then I think the next 3 days after that happens, that head coach might be in the hot seat because you were expected to really almost run the tables this year with the schedule you had and the teams you played, and then you get to the playoffs and you have no Mahomes, you have no Lamar Jackson, you have no Joe Burrow, and if you lose in the wild card game in the first round, I think there are questions to be asked if you can go, because guess what? Kansas City has been to the Super Bowl. Cincinnati's been to the Super Bowl. And those were the major obstacles you had. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if Buffalo doesn't win this game.
Yeah, you threw a whole monkey in the wrench that I wasn't ready for that. I was thinking, if Jacksonville loses, okay, but they're young and whatever. But if Buffalo loses, and they certainly can. Jacksonville has been playing really well for the last couple of weeks. The over-under on this one, the highest one on the weekend, it's 52.5. Most of the others are in the mid-40s, but they're expecting a lot more points being scored here in this game, and I believe that as well. I think
good weather too.
Yeah, and it's not going to be hot enough to be a problem for Buffalo, but I think cold teams coming from the north and going south and playing warm weather is a lot easier than it is for a warm weather team to go up north and play a cold weather team. It just completely discombobulates most of those guys that aren't used to it, or at least haven't had to deal with it more than maybe once or twice. And when you practice in it every day and you got to get through the grind of the snow and the cold and all that kind of stuff, it does make a difference. Anyway, so this should be a great football game, and we're looking forward to it for obvious reasons. This is the one at 1 o'clock on CBS. The 4 o'clock, actually it's a 4:30 game, which is the second of the three on Sunday, features San Francisco going to Philadelphia. 12-5 49ers. Brock Purdy, because of his injury, the numbers don't look great, right? 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, 10 interception. Christian McCaffrey, of course, leading the team in rushing and in receiving. They're fifth in rushing. They're 24th. I'm sorry, in passing. They're fifth. They're 24th in rushing, 10th in scoring. Defense is 13th. They've had so many injuries. I think they're a surprise here, gentlemen. And Joey, I'll start with you. But I don't know if it's more of a surprise that San Francisco's here, or if it's the numbers for Philadelphia are as good as they are, considering that we've been kind of ho-humming them at 11-6 throughout most of the second half of the season. When are the Eagles going to dominate and take over and show what they've been able to do for the last 3 or 4 years? Are they there, Joey? Is Saquon and Jalen and the rest of the team, especially that offensive line, are they ready to go?
So let me ask this question. What if the Eagles, by sitting people last week, losing that game, what if they knew exactly what they were doing? Maybe this was a better matchup for them than the other team they would have had to play, being a number 2 seed. That being said, you have an injured 49ers team coming in that's injured at linebacker, that's injured at a safety position, that's crippled a little bit. You have a left tackle who will probably play, but he's not 100%.
Right.
You have a running back that has carried the load all year that's a little bit beat up. This might be an easier path to get where they want to go, especially since the Eagles have such a dynamic defense. I expect the Eagles to win this game at home with that crowd. And I know the 49ers have gone in there before and played really well. That's the year that Purdy got hurt and McCaffrey was like the backup quarterback or some foolishness like that a couple of years ago.
Right.
So they've been in that environment before. They know what it looks like. But I expect the Eagles to come and play well. I think Jalen Hurts and the receivers who have been out, and Saquon, I think they're on the verge of having a big game. And I couldn't have said that a few weeks ago, but then I started to think about this, and I think this might have been a better matchup for them, and they knew that by sitting out players. Now, you don't obviously want to lose games, and if the backups had pulled out a victory last week, they would have taken it. But from a matchup perspective, I'm not sure this is not a better matchup for them.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Joey, because they made no attempt at all to move players back into the lineup and put them in to win this. They went with what they went with, and their strategy was, if this is the path that we're going to be having, and obviously they spent a lot of time thinking about that. Who would we rather play? And an injured 49ers team that is still dangerous, Brian, don't get me wrong, but would you rather have that and be a 4.5-point favorite at home, or would you want to take on, Green Bay or who else would it have been? Maybe the Rams, right? One of those teams that come into your building. Not exactly sure, but your thoughts, Brian. Obviously, give me your Philadelphia perspective real quick before I know I'm talking too much. Jalen Hurts surprised me. 3,200 yards. That's above average, but I thought he would have more than that. 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Saquon has 1,140 yards. Only 7 touchdowns out of him. We think that's a bad year. I'll take the yardage, and I'll also take what Jalen's doing. Only 6 picks. He's controlling the ball. He's really matured as a quarterback. Enough said by me. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I'll say this. The Eagles are kind of the opposite of San Francisco right now. They're rested and they're healthy. So they're in a position where they went on their own terms. They said, we're happy with the seed we got. We're in the playoffs. We won the division. It may have been more so we don't really care who we play. We feel like we can beat anybody, as opposed to, a strategic, hey, let's play these guys or these guys instead. But this team still has a ton of talent. I think up front they do match up really well against San Francisco. I will say that. I think their front seven is stifling still, even in a down year for them. And if they can contain McCaffrey, I think they have a phenomenal chance to win this game. Joey mentioned earlier, if Trent Williams doesn't play, this is massive for San Francisco, because he's integral to what they're trying to do.
Yes, he is.
Offensively. And then the receiver room's already a mess. You have Pearsall hurt last week, excuse me. So there's a lot of question marks for the San Francisco team. They do have some experience. I like the way Purdy's been playing lately, but it's going to be hard to pick against Philadelphia playing at home in the cold against a California team. That suits them well. Everything's kind of pointing in the direction for the Eagles to get a win. They are the defending champs, by the way. They still are out there defending their title. They're still a very good football team. And you know what? Maybe this is the week that they come out and they say, hey, they surprise some people. They play a complete football game, and they shut everybody up that was dogging them, especially us during the regular season, for just, looking a little bit lackluster. And I will say, if it comes down to it, Jalen Hurts, you mentioned his numbers. He does not turn the ball over a lot. That's one thing on him that's elite, is he's very good at taking care of the football. The yards don't necessarily jump out at you. He maybe doesn't have all the touchdowns in the world, but he's very good at taking care of the football. And that's huge for Philadelphia, because they're not turning it over. They're not flipping field position. Their defense gets to go out there. They get to make stops, and they kind of bank on you to do the opposite. So I think this Philadelphia team, I think they're better right now, even healthy. Even if Fred Warner was playing in this game, I still think Philadelphia is a little bit better. And I think they'll win this football game. And, I think we'll be looking back at maybe, them resting their starters. I think it's going to look good unless they come out a little bit flat. But I don't mind what they did. I think it works out well, and I think they match up very, very well against the San Francisco team.
Well, you mentioned that West Coast teams do come out. It sometimes takes a full half. They got to come out for the second half, the start of the third quarter, before they go, oh, hey, we better start playing, because it's early in the morning. Joey, it's a later game, so it's the equivalent of starting at 1 o'clock out in San Francisco. We've mentioned a lot about Philadelphia right now. Just give me one thing that, is it the running game that has to work for the 49ers? Does Brock Purdy have to have 60-70% completion percentage on third down? What do the Niners need to do to go, no, we're here for a reason, and we're going to win this game?
Well, I think all of that. I think they have to be able to control the ball and win the time of possession, because defensively the Eagles are so good. They're very similar to the team that just beat San Francisco last week in the Seahawks. So defensively, their defensive front, and obviously we saw what happened at home when the 49ers scored 3 points in that game. So this is going to be a tough game. So if the 49ers do not control the clock, do not run the ball, it really doesn't matter how much they pass for, because now you're going to force Purdy into throwing 40 passes, and that's not a recipe for winning this football game.
Yeah, well, Brock's again 20 touchdowns, 10 interceptions for him, coming back and really taking the team back to where it needs to be from a playoff perspective, and obviously, the 12 wins for that organization with all of the injuries that they have. Very impressed with what San Francisco is doing, and they are a 4.5-point underdog. The 49ers are. Philadelphia favored to win this. The over on that is 44.5. Next game we're going to look at. This is the evening game, and guys, this looks great on paper. Los Angeles Chargers going into New England, 11-6 Chargers going to the 14-3. Let me just give you the numbers on New England right now. What an impressive! They're 250 yards a game passing. That's fourth in the league. They average 128 on the ground. That's sixth in the league. They're averaging 28.8 points a game. That's second. And then their defense is only giving up 18.8. That's fourth. Their worst number in the league is 6. They're in the top 5 in everything. I didn't know that they had done that good of a job, but they're taking on a very good and a very explosive Charger team that can play like they belong in the Super Bowl one week and play like I don't even know why I'm watching this team. Joey, we'll start with you. which Chargers team is going to show up in New England? And if it's the bad one, do they stand any chance at all?
Probably not if it's a bad one. But the problem with the Chargers right now is, again, they've been decimated with injuries on the offensive line, in and out. And while the Patriots doesn't have a dynamic pass rush, defensively as a whole, they're pretty good. They have a couple cover guys. They play really sound on the defensive end, and obviously on the offensive side, they have a player who will be probably finishing the top 2 for MVP of the league in the quarterback there, and they run the ball by committee. They're really good on special teams. So I think this is an easy advantage going into the game for the Patriots. But you still have to play the game, and Herbert is, he'll do all he can. But again, you have a West Coast team really coming into the elements in Foxborough, so that'll be interesting as well, especially if it's really cold.
Yeah. And as soon as the sun goes down and you're going to be warming up and you're a Charger guy and you're going to go, I need another layer of clothing underneath. And I promise you, Brian, I've seen it happen. When New England sees that, they're going to be licking their chops if they see guys looking like they're cold when they go out for warmups. But obviously New England has impressed. They had the same record, but they lose the tiebreaker to Denver to have the top seed. Is it interesting to you when in a year where we don't have Kansas City, we don't have Baltimore, but we've got New England again for a completely different reason? This isn't a Belichick-Brady team. This is Drake May and Mike Vrabel. Who would have thought that this early? Are they playing with house money?
Well, I mean, the way they're playing right now and the way Drake May's looking at it, I mean, he's got a legit argument for the MVP, and Vrabel's got a very good argument for Coach of the Year. So, I mean, look, I know it's not Belichick Brady, but it might be the next best thing for them because it's just everything they're doing is clicking. You mentioned all their numbers. There's not a single category, special teams included, where they're bad. They're just good across the board. They have a ton of talent. They have a two-headed monster at running back. I like their receiver room. Diggs is kind of the main guy, but it's kind of by committee. They have some guys, especially that can make plays down the field. They got a good tight end group. They got a good offensive line. There's just nothing here that makes me think that the Chargers can win this football game. But I like how the Chargers are coached. I like Justin Herbert a lot, but they're down both their tackles. They haven't really been healthy all year. It's an uphill climb. New England won as many games as they did for a reason, right? And I would argue they're probably the best team in the AFC. I know Denver finished with the same record as them and owns the tiebreaker, so they get the first seed in the bye. But it's looking at this Patriots team on paper, it's really hard not to think that they're going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl here in a couple weeks. And I just, talent-wise, I just don't think the Chargers have enough. I think this Patriots team is just too stacked. They're still very young, and they have a chance to get even better next year too, which is crazy. I know we're talking about right now, but I love watching this team play. When Drake May when he's on, he's just I understand what he did a couple weeks ago. It was the Jets, and we've dogged them all year, but it's surgical. He's playing with a ton of confidence. McDaniels is doing a phenomenal job with that offense, which he's done throughout his career. He's one of the best OCs to ever do it, I think. And this team is clicking on all cylinders, and it's going to be very, very difficult to pick against them. I think they beat this team. I think they beat the Chargers by 2 scores. I think they win this game easily.
Let me ask you this, Joey. You've asked a few questions and kind of getting us, to think and thump our brains a little bit. Of the 3 possibilities, you've got the Chargers being the one that is actually going to take place. But if Houston or Buffalo were playing either one of those, would you change your opinion on the way that the Patriots have impressed? Do you think they went against either of those opponents, or do you think that the matchup would be a little bit different should it be Buffalo or Houston?
Well, I think that would be Houston. Despite the way Houston can rush the passer, I really do have some concerns on CJ Stroud. I'm just not comfortable with what I'm seeing, some of the things I'm seeing with him yet. The Buffalo game, though, that may change my mind, only because it's a division game. Those teams play each other twice a year, and had that been a third game, that would have been really interesting, because Buffalo they're used to the elements. They're used to everything that's going on in Foxborough. They have a quarterback who's a veteran quarterback who's the reigning league MVP. So that might be that might have changed my mind. But facing the Chargers doesn't change my mind at all. I think the Patriots should win this game and maybe even win it going away.
Yeah, and if Buffalo wins, and we may see it in a week or two. It just depends on how the matchups are. But very interesting debate that we could have on that. But what we do know is that the Chargers will be there, and I think it's unanimous. All three of us think that New England should have their way. Maybe not as much as what we think the Rams will do in Carolina, but certainly close. It should be one of those types of games where New England will reestablish themselves as a playoff, a competitive Super Bowl prepping team in such a quick amount of time. It's been amazing to see their turnaround. All right, last game. I'll start with you, Joey, because you mentioned him just a moment ago. C.J. Stroud goes to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh needed a missed field goal at the end of the season in order to be able to get there. Aaron Rodgers with 3,300 yards. He has 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Pittsburgh is not very dominating in anything. Their running is 22nd. Excuse me. Their passing is 22nd. Their running is 26th. They're scoring. They're 15th in the league. Defense is 17th. Like Carolina, this is one of those teams that just struggle to find why are they even in the playoffs? How did they get there? Well, they won their division. That's the only reason. But they're going against a Houston team that is impressive defensively, guys. They're number 2. They only give up 17.4. Is that enough? Because the defense wins championships, Joey. Will that be enough for them?
Well, it may be. And the reason why I say that is, and obviously I'm a homer for the Steelers. I'll say that out front. But
really?
But
really? That was a surprise.
Hey, but stretch your mind and see this. What if Aaron Rodgers was brought there for games like this? Okay,
yes,
just like the Baltimore game, he's brought there for games like this. Okay, you have a young quarterback coming in, C.J. Stroud, with a team that has been on and off being able to run the ball, and he's played okay. He hadn't been great, despite some of the numbers he's put up. Defensively, the Texans are outstanding. Okay, which will force Aaron Rodgers to get rid of the ball quickly at times. Okay, on the flip side of that, the Steelers' defensive line they've played really good lately, especially last week. If you see some of the things that Hayward did and Watt did, I mean, so they're really going to be, from a defensive standpoint, this would be an interesting thing, interesting game. DK Metcalf will be back.
Yeah.
Now, Houston has Stingley over there, who's a really good corner. So that opens up everybody else. And if Aaron can play like he did last week, that's a big if, because he's 41, 42 years old. If he can get Freiermuth down the middle of the field, I think this would be interesting. Now, I would feel less confident if the game were in Houston, but the fact that the game is in Pittsburgh outside at night on Monday night, despite what the bettors think, I'm going to side with the Steelers here at home.
Ryan, it's a lot right there. Tell you what, but Steelers, not very impressive unless, guess what? You put the playoff picture in perspective, and obviously they come to show up for this. Do they have everything that they would need in order to take on a very inconsistent C.J. Stroud, but a very good defense that Houston has? Your thoughts here?
The first thing I look at a lot of these games is the weather, right? Because Houston's a warm weather team. They play indoors. They don't have to go play in the cold a lot. That's the one disadvantage that they have here. Is the Steelers are used to this. They've been playing this weather for a month already. So, this is nothing for them. We've said the defense, we've beat it to a pulp. Defense travels, right? And Houston's sneakily a very good running team. They run the ball pretty well. They're able to control the front, decently. And I think Stroud has been consistent a little bit, especially early in the year. He has gotten better. They've got Nico Collins more involved. The scoring has gone up, but this team's won 9 games in a row. It's a really impressive feat. If you look at them and the Jaguars, as far as just ripping off wins and really putting themselves in the conversation, these teams have been flawless for the last 2 months. So I'll say this: this is a hard game for me to pick. I think it's a coin. I think it's a coin flip. I think it's the Steelers' defense last week, their front four was exceptional. Not just at getting after Lamar Jackson, not just putting pressure on him, but there were 3 or 4 batted balls in key situations, right, on second and medium, on third and long, where they stick their hand up and they make a play. Maybe they don't get a sack, but they force the Ravens' offense off the field. And if they can replicate that, I think they can match, maybe not to the level, because I think the Texans arguably the best defense in the league. But I think if the Steelers are playing their best, I think they can play with Houston defensively. And if they turn into a defensive slugfest, they take care of the football. Like Joey said, you might see one or two Aaron Rodgers, fist bumps, because he looked good last week. He looked young. They were getting everybody involved, and the DK absence, it hurt him. But I think you saw Freiermuth get involved more. They had Gainwell get involved more in the passing game. They moved the ball around. It was real ugly against Cleveland, but I think they kind of figured it out in the second half against Baltimore. And if they can ride that momentum into this game, I think, this is probably my toss-up game of the week. I can't really pick a game, one of these teams either way, but I think it's going to be a good football game, and I think both of these teams are very well matched coming into this one on the Monday night.
Well, Brian, I'm hearing that you're selling me on Pittsburgh right now, but you mentioned this the other day, so I went to look it up. Houston has won 9 in a row. They've won 12 of their last 14 games. How much of that comes into play? Like, look, we've been behind and we can come back. We've been ahead and we've kept the lead. We know how to win. We have learned how to do it against somebody, even with Jacksonville in the same division. How much does that come into play on on Monday night?
They have a ton of momentum, right? This is the kind, the time of the year you want it. They're riding high, and this is a team that, kind of a down year last year. So it's interesting because the quarterback play matters a lot, right? When we talk about the other games, you talk about the quarterback play, and it's just Rodgers has been there before, right? He's done it so many times, and he's done it on this stage, and it's second nature to him. And like Joey said, I'm not going to knock CJ Stroud. I think he's a good player, but right now I don't know if I trust him. If it comes down to a game where both teams are playing good defense and field position matters, and it comes down to a field goal, my money's more so going to be on CJ Stroud making a mistake as opposed to Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's sort of why I'm leading Pittsburgh. I just think Houston's defense is a little bit better. And, it's not a knock on Pittsburgh. I think Houston probably has maybe the best defense in the league right now as far as, secondary linebacker group, and then your front four.
You know what? From a talent perspective, I think Houston is a more talented football team. I really do. Now, my question with the 9 wins in a row is Houston is really a young team.
Yeah,
in a lot of spots they're really young. Now, will a young team get tight in the playoffs, knowing that it's one and done? They haven't faced that one and done scenario. Will they get tight? Because they haven't lost in so long. And those are the questions you have to ask as well.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm a good coach, I'm prepping and planting seeds all year long that this win is getting us ready for where we need to be. And especially as the division started changing. And Joey, my final question to you is going to be, we've seen it. It's happened a couple of times. Brian has mentioned the fist pump, and we're going to get discount double check and the banners and the ribbons and everything that go along with Aaron Rodgers when he's successful. But is there a chance that this young, athletic, fast defense that Houston has makes this quarterback look like he's 45? And why on earth did Pittsburgh bring him in? We made him look old this game, and you made a mistake. Is that a possibility for what Houston's going to try to do on Monday evening?
Oh, without question. It's going to be up to Pittsburgh to get rid of the ball quickly because Pittsburgh offensive line is decent. I wouldn't call them a top 10 offensive line, but we will call Houston's pass rush elite.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you have an elite, 2 elite rushers, an elite defensive line, the quarterback can't afford to hold on to the ball.
Nope.
But again, the plus is having DK back.
Yes.
I think that'll help open up the field a little bit. But if he holds on to the ball, it could be a long day. And yes, he will look like an older quarterback if he's taking a lot of hits.
And they are 26 rushing wise, Pittsburgh is. So that offensive line kind of speaks for itself, and that we don't push guys around too much, and we don't have an elite back in our backfield like, let's say, Philadelphia, Seattle, or what the Rams have right now. There's some teams that have that. Final thoughts from you, Brian?
I think for this one, I think Gainwell gonna have to have a lot of yards after catch. I think they're gonna have to be quick hitters. They're gonna have to make some guys miss. The receivers and the running backs are gonna have to make some plays in space because, like Joey mentioned, they got 2 guys with 12 plus sacks. Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. are gonna get after Rodgers. Like you mentioned, he's 41 years old. They're gonna pin their ears back. They're gonna say, "We trust our linebackers. We can stop the run. We're gonna get after him, get him off his spot." So, the counter to that, probably a lot of quick hitters, like Joey said, a lot of screens, right? A lot of swing passes, and you're going to have to get in space. They're going to have to make somebody miss. Somebody other than Aaron Rodgers on this offense, one of the skill guys, probably multiple, they're going to have to make a play at some point if they want to win this game.
And a 27-year-old Aaron Rodgers was running around, scrambling, buying extra time, and winning games and doing fist pumps and getting the ball down the field. 41, it'll be an interesting scenario that we get to see that. Final thoughts from you, Joey?
No, I think this playoff weekend would be great. I think we have some great games lined up here. It'll be really interesting. Some of the point spreads are interesting, but we're gonna have some great games. And again, I go back to offensive line play, and defense usually wins championships. So the teams that run the ball the best and defend the best, obviously, win the line of scrimmage, will probably be victorious this week.
Well, there you have it, everybody. We appreciate you sticking around. You got the Rams in Carolina. That is a 4:30 game on Saturday. It'll be on Fox. 8 o'clock later that same Saturday, Green Bay at Chicago. They'll meet for the third time this season. Sunday at 1 o'clock, Buffalo at Jacksonville. At 4:30, it'll be San Francisco at Philadelphia. At 8 o'clock, the NBC game will be the LA Chargers at New England. And then the Monday night game on ESPN at 8:15, Houston at Pittsburgh. We've addressed all of them. We appreciate you being a part of the show, everybody. Please subscribe and tell your friends. We look forward to sharing more episodes with you as the NFL playoffs continue. This has been 100 Yards of Football. You've been watching the NFL Wild Card Weekend Preview. We appreciate you being a part of it, and the games are going to be fantastic, as Joey and Brian have said. And thank you, Joey Clinkscales, Brian LeBel. I'm Harper LeBel saying good night, everybody. Have a fantastic